Okay, in Tahir Benjelloun's The Sand Child, we're now up to the very last chapter. It's a bit of a long one, so bear with me. I'm on page 150 in my copy of the book. This is chapter 18, The Andalusian Night. The dream was precise and very dense. I set out in search of a long, dark braid of hair. I went out into the streets of Buenos Aires, guided like a sleepwalker by the delicate scent of a fine head of hair. Catching a glimpse of it in the crowd, I hastened on. It disappeared, and so I continued my pursuit until I found myself outside the city, lost in piles of stone and burned calves' heads, surrounded by those unknown quarters that we now call shanty-towns, alone, oppressed by the smell of burning flesh, and stared at by a gang of half-naked kids brandishing pieces of wood shaped into rifles, playing at being guerrillas. When I tried to run away, my legs refused to move. I felt I might suffocate. Just then I caught a glimpse of the black hair once more. I was saved. I left the shanty town without difficulty. A few hundred yards further on, a half-glimpsed figure gestured to me to follow her. I obeyed, and found myself in the middle of the Medina of an Arab town. No dark head of hair was to be seen. There was no one to lead me on. I was alone, but relieved and even happy to walk through those narrow, shady alleyways. Not all the women were veiled. With good humor, the men were praising their merchandise. They were selling spices of every color, Turkish slippers, carpets, woolen blankets, dried fruit. Some shouted, others sang. The Medina appeared to my eyes as a tangle of places, streets, and squares, in which every kind of miracle was possible. Thrown from an Argentinian shantytown into an Arab Medina, I walked in a daze, in which everything astonished me. The streets were crammed with vendors and old beggars. A knife grinder, who had his grindstone mounted on a bicycle, announced his presence by whistling into a sort of plastic harmonica, which gave out a strident sound recognizable from afar. There was the water seller, an old bent man who uttered a long painful crowd, something between a threatening wolf and an abandoned dog, to praise the freshness and benefits of the spring water contained in the black skin slung across his back. There were also beggars, endlessly repeating the same mechanical litany, hands outstretched, motionless, eternal. The street would not have existed without them. It belonged to them. I don't know how, but suddenly I knew that the water seller, the knife grinder, and one of the beggars, a blind man, were part of the story that I was living through. I saw them as partners. I was also convinced that they were in league to trace the path that I would take, and to compose, by their cries and attitudes, the same face and frail, unsteady body, swept this way and that, by a story woven by alleyways. I watched the three men posted in the Medina like shadows moving with the sun. I was in pain, but I couldn't say where. Concentrating on that pain, crouching at the entrance to a mosque, I saw, like an apparition, the face of a young woman, puffy, distorted with some inner pain. I saw the face, then the tiny body, crouching in a large shopping basket. The legs must have been folded or rooted in the ground. I was the only one to see this brutal image in the alleyway, which was probably on the other side of the mosque. Suddenly everything went dark. The Medina became a city of darkness, and I heard only the funeral litany of the three men. Their shrill nasal voices described the features of the face I had seen. It was more than a vision. It was a presence. I could feel its breath and warmth. This dream pursued me for several days. I no longer dared leave my library, fearful of night and sleep. The black hair was the extended hand of death, pushing me toward nothingness. In order to rid myself of this obsession, I decided to undertake the journey described in the dream. After all, between death and me, there could not have been more than a season left. I might as well anticipate the ordeal. I forgot to tell you that in the Medina the currency in circulation was none other than the 50-centime coin, the batin, though there were also blank notes dating from our own time. Friends, you have listened to the stranger with patience and hospitality, but since this story and its character have roamed my night, my soul has grown weary. I thought death would come suddenly, without warning, without ceremony. I was wrong. It has taken a winding path, which I do not find unpleasant. It has taken its time. My soul awoke, and my body rose up and began to walk. I followed it without asking questions. I crossed Europe. I stopped in Andalusia. Despite my age and my latest infirmity, I indulged myself. I spent a whole day in the palace of the Alhambra. I sensed things. I smelled soil and stone. I stroked the walls and let my hand trail over the marble. So I was visiting the Alhambra for the first time with my eyes extinguished. At the end of the day, I hid myself in the Moorish bath. The guards saw nothing, so I shut myself up in the palace and garden. Night fell at about 9 o'clock. It was July, a mild night. I emerged from my hiding place like a child. What bliss! I trembled with pleasure. I walked without groping, listened to the murmur of the water, breathed in deeply the scent of jasmine, roses, and lemon trees, listened to the echo of Andalusian music played here 5 centuries before. When the orchestra stopped playing, the muezzin called to prayer in his harsh, strong voice. I thought of the kings, princes, philosophers, scientists leaving this kingdom, abandoning the country and its secrets to the cross of the infidel. With my hands on the marble, it was farewell to the day, the end of nostalgia, farewell to the old memory. I spent a night of disturbing euphoria. Beloved of the moon, I merged my night in the mildness of the night that covered Alhambra. I thought I had rediscovered my sight for a brief moment in that Andalusian night, a night illuminated by my night, an outraged solitude, displaced in time, left behind the wall. There were voices, festivities. Poets recited verses that I knew by heart, and I spoke them along with the poets. I walked, followed the voices. I arrived at the courtyard of the lions. The heavy silence of an immobile time reigned there. I sat on the ground as if someone had ordered me to halt. I could no longer hear the poets. I sought my voice in the memory of myself. The first memory was of the youth that I was, accompanying his father, who was already blind, through these same gardens. Suddenly a woman's voice, deep and mocking, reached me from outside. I was expecting it. She slowly articulated the first letters of the Arabic alphabet. Alif, Ba, Ta, Jim, Ha, Dal. The chanted letters echoed around the courtyard. I stayed there until dawn without moving, my ears attentive, my hands gripping the marble. It was a woman's voice in a man's body. Just before the first glimmers of daylight, 2 strong hands seized my neck, trying to strangle me. I fought back with the last strength remaining to me. Such strength is the most terrible. I had a physical power I had not suspected. With my stick, I lashed out. Without letting go, the man uttered a cry of pain. I felt his body shift slightly to the left with the same strength. I got up and delivered a mighty blow to the strangler. Was it a human being, an angel of misfortune, a ghost, a bird condemned to die alone? Was it a man or a woman? Did I really live through that hand-to-hand fight with a veiled man? Or did I dream this incident in the dream of the Andalusian night? I know that by morning I was exhausted and my neck ached. The young man who accompanied me must have been worried. He realized that I had got myself locked in, for he was waiting for me early in the morning at the main entrance. I was happy, despite tiredness and lack of sleep. I know now that the body that had thrown itself upon me during the night wore a thick, long wig. It must have been death. The death that still mocks me came close to me, then moved away with the same evil delight, the same insolence. That night was probably supposed to be my last. I would have had a fine death in that night at Granada, but I fought back with all the fury of a young man. I felt free, delivered of that slow, painful weight. Now it can come. I know its face, I know its voice, I know its hands, I know many things about it, but like everybody else, I know neither the hour nor the day of its coming. For some years now I have gone on walking. I walk slowly, like someone who has come from so far that he no longer expects to arrive. Where am I now? I smell the strong scent of fresh mint. I hear the voice of fruit sellers. I detect the aroma of cooking. We must be near some small, cheap restaurant. Strong smells mixed with burning kerosene. All this is intoxicating for an old man who has walked for such a long time. Am I the object of some conspiracy? Tell me now, you who hold my fate in your hands, would they have found a corpse or a book in one of the palaces of Cordoba, Toledo, Granada? Did I dream the Andalusian night, or did I live through it? Your silence is harsh, but I am familiar with the land of your ancestors, and close to that twilight that is coming upon you and enveloping you. All this was done by a woman who conceived the excessive, the impossible, the unthinkable. I, too, could quote from the Diwan of al-Muqtadir el-Maghrabi, who lived in the 12th century, and without identifying myself with the reciter, I will recall this quarteta. It's in Spanish. Others died, but this happened in the past, which is the season, as everyone knows, most favorable to death. It is possible that I, subject of Yaqub al-Mansur, must, like Aristotle and Roses, die in turn. Oh, it's not the last chapter. Chapter 19 is the last chapter. Okay, that was the end of 18. Chapter 19. The Gate of the Sands. A man with small gray eyes, almost closed with exhaustion and time, a beard reddened with henna, his head wrapped in a blue turban, was stretched out on the ground like a wounded animal. He looked toward the stranger, who had just sunk into a deep sleep. The stranger's eyes were open, but raised to the ceiling, unseeing, letting pass dreams, mirrors, fountains, butterflies, and the day. The men and women didn't move. They were afraid to awaken the stranger too suddenly, for he was the prisoner of a secret that intrigued them. Thinking about what he had said, they waited. The light of the fading day gave shadows to the simplest objects, animated them with colors and brief glory, passed over faces, caught a look for an instant, then swept away without disturbing anything. The man with gray eyes tried to rise, having trouble regaining the use of his legs. He leaned on a stool and slowly dragged himself to the cafe door. He was entirely enveloped in his worn, dirty burnous. One could hardly see his face, which he hid with a part of his turban. Under his arm he carried an old briefcase. He came up to the waiting, motionless throng, stopped, and sat on a squeaky chair. A man gestured to him not to make any noise, but the broken old chair squeaked. He asked for a glass of water. A neighbor offered him his, which was half full. The old man took out of his briefcase a pinch of yellow powder, dissolved it in the water, and swallowed it, murmuring an appeal to God to shorten his pains and cure him. Then he put down the glass, gave a nod of thanks to his neighbor, placed his briefcase on the table, opened it, and took out a large, well-thumbed notebook. Without warning, he raised the book in the air and declared, "Everything is here. As God is my witness." The people shifted their attention from the sleeping stranger, abandoning him to his sleep. "Everything is here, and you know it," repeated the man in the blue turban. These words, said over and over several times by a familiar voice, functioned like a magic key that opens forgotten or condemned doors. Pointing to the blind man, he said, We will be the poorer when that man is dead. An infinite number of things, stories, dreams, and countries will die with him. That is why I am here. I am with you once more for a few hours, for a few days. Things have changed since I was here last. Some of you have gone away. Others have come. Between us there are ashes and forgetfulness. Between you and me lies long absence, a desert where I wandered, a mosque where I lived, a terrace where I read and wrote, a grave in which I slept. It has taken me some time to reach this city, where I recognize neither places nor men. I left, driven from the great square. I walked for a long time, through pains and centuries. Everything is here, as God is my witness. He paused for a moment, stared at the big notebook, opened it, turned the pages. They were empty. If you examined them closely, you could see that there were still traces of ink, bits of sentences in pale ink, small, simple pencil drawings. He went on. The book is empty, ruined. I was imprudent enough to leaf through it one night. As the beams from the full moon fell on it, the light effaced the words, one after another. Nothing remains of what time consigned to this book. Of course, there are a few snatches here and there, a few syllables, but the moon has taken our story away from us. What can a storyteller do when the moon robs him so shamelessly, condemned to silence, to flight, and to wandering? I wanted to forget. I did not succeed. I met charlatans and bandits, wandered with nomadic tribes who invaded towns. I have known droughts, times when all the cattle have died, the despair of the men in the plains. I have scoured the country from north to south, and from south to infinity. The blind man woke. His head moved. His open eyes rested on nothingness. He got up. An empty chair fell over, making an unpleasant noise. A boy rushed up and held him by the arm, and together they went off to the great square, which was quiet at that hour. The old man whispered a few words in the boy's ear. The boy stopped for a moment, then walked over to a circle of men and women, sitting on mats on the floor of the cafe, around a lady who was dressed entirely in white and who was talking slowly. Room was made for the blind man, who sat down, cross-legged. All his attention was concentrated on the woman's voice. Thus he passed from a story to which he believed he held the keys, to a tale of which he knew neither the beginning nor the meaning. He was happy to find himself embarked in the middle of a sentence, as if his journey in the Medina were following a course dictated by his wishes, as if he were trying desperately to lose his way and to sink into the labyrinth that he had designed for himself in his Buenos Aires library. The woman did not stop. To the touch, as for seeing. But then, this sword was merely the vision of a prince possessed, yet the blade shone in the midday sun, and the men were washing the paving stones with the blood where the blood had clotted. The blind man nodded in agreement. On the other side of the square, in the cafe, the man in the blue turban continued his story. If our city has 7 gates, it is because it was beloved of 7 saints. But this love has become a curse, as I have known ever since I dared to recount the story and destiny of the 8th birth. Death is there, outside, turning like fortune's wheel. It has a face, hands, and a voice. I know it. It has accompanied my steps for a long time. I have become familiar with its cynicism. It no longer frightens me. It has taken away all the characters in my tales. I left in the evening, in the middle of the story, promising to tell my faithful audience the following day the rest of the adventures. When I came back, the story was already over. During the night, death had seized the main characters, so I found myself with scraps of the story, scraps unable to live and breathe. My imagination was ruined. I tried to justify the sudden disappearances. My audience would not go along with me. Death, whose mocking laughter I could hear in the distance, was turning me into a clown. I rambled on, stammering. I was no longer a storyteller, but a charlatan, a puppet manipulated by the fingers of death. At first, I didn't understand what was happening. I blamed my memory, an old man's memory. It wasn't even that I had dried up. I still had a good stock of stories. But the instant I began to tell them, they were emptied of their substance. I spent sleepless nights. It was during one of these nights that death appeared to me in the form of a character. The eighth birth, Ahmed, or Zahra, and threatened me with all heaven's thunderbolts. He reproached me for betraying the secret, for soiling by my presence the empire of the secret, the place where El Ser el Makhfi, the supreme secret, is kept hidden deep in the earth. I saw madness approaching. I no longer had a face that I could show the public, and I was ashamed. The curse had fallen upon me. Neither you nor I would ever know the end of the story, which could not pass through all the gates. I had to hide myself. I tried other things, other occupations. A public writer. I had no customers. A quack. I had no success. I played the lute. People blocked up their ears. Nothing worked. I was cursed and hopeless. I made a pilgrimage to the far south of the country. I arrived after months of walking and wandering through the strange villages, which in my madness must have been only apparitions, empty bodies set down on my way by death, which was mocking me. I remember one evening, when I was tired, I fell asleep under a tree in a desert place where there was nothing but stones and a tree. Then I woke the next morning. I found myself in a cemetery where people dressed in white were burying a number of youths in a big ditch without shrouds, naked. I was horrified. I went up to the ditch. I thought I recognized my son. I yelled out. A strong hand was placed over my mouth to stifle my cry. I went away, as if guided by instinct. I walked for a long time, then found myself back at my starting point. The characters I thought I had invented appeared on my way, called to me, and demanded an explanation. Condemning fingers pointed at me, accusing me of betrayal. Ahmed's father locked me up in an old building and forced me to go back to the square and tell the story a different way. He was an embittered, brutal man, probably on the threshold of hell. The mother was behind him, in a small wheelchair. She kept spitting on the ground. Her lackluster eyes were fixed on me. They terrified me. I met Fatima, too. She was no longer sick. It was on a Friday. She stopped me and said, "I am Fatima. I am cursed." She appeared to me laden with flowers, happy, like someone who had just taken her revenge on destiny. A slight smile played around her lips. Her white dress, something between a shroud and a wedding dress, was almost intact. Just a little soil was caught in the folds. "Do you recognize me now?" she asked calmly. "I am the woman you chose to be your hero's victim. You soon got rid of me. I have now come back to visit the places and observe the things that I wanted to be eternal. I see that the country hasn't changed, and you are lost. You have lost your story and your reason. The land is dry, especially in the south. I didn't know the south. I am following in the footsteps of your story. I count the dead and await the survivors. You can do nothing to me. I belong to that eternity of which you speak without knowledge. The country hasn't changed. Things have even got worse." Strange. People spend their lives being abused. Every day they are humiliated. They don't react. Then one day they go out into the streets and smash everything. The army intervenes and fires on the crowd to re-establish order. Silence. They dig a big ditch and throw the bodies in. It's becoming chronic. When I was sick, I didn't see what was happening around me. I was struggling with my fists and waiting deliverance. Now I hear everything, especially the cries of the children and the gunshots. It's stupid to die of a stray bullet when one isn't even 20, and confused. Poor children. She paused for a moment, took out some dates from a pocket hidden by the flowers, and offered me some. "Here, eat these dates. They're good. Don't be afraid. These aren't the ones they put on a dead man's face in place of eyes." "No, I picked them myself this morning." "Eat them. You'll see more clearly." Indeed, upon eating them, I saw clearly. Dazzled by a strong light, I saw shadows carved out of a white brightness. Of course, nobody was near me now. Fatima had disappeared. I rubbed my eyes till they hurt. I was completely possessed by this story and its people. A story is like a house, an old house, with different levels, rooms, corridors, doors, and windows, locks, cellars, useless spaces. The walls are its memory. Scratch the stone a little, hold your ear to it, and you will hear things. Time gathers together what the day brings, and what night disperses. It keeps and holds. Stone is the witness. Each stone is a page of writing, read and crossed out. A story, a house, a book, a desert, a journey. Repentance and forgiveness. Did you know that to forgive is to hide? I have no glory or splendor to carry me to heaven. I have forgotten the 5 prayers. I believed that the spring from which I drew my stories would never dry up, like the ocean, like clouds moving across the sky, changing but always giving rain. I seek forgiveness. Who would dare give me that oblivion? Someone told me that an anonymous poet who became a saint of the sands which cover up and hide might help me. I set off in search of him. I divested myself of everything and followed the caravan on foot. I wore nothing but woolen clothes and took the road to the south without looking back. I no longer had any family, any occupation, any ties. Before, I lived without caring about tomorrow. I had my own circle on the great square, a faithful and attentive audience. My stories gave me enough to live on. I slept in peace. I rummaged around in ancient manuscripts. I stole stories from others until the day when a poor woman from Alexandria came to see me. She was slim and dark. Her eyes saw things in their true light. Of all the storytellers on the square whose stories she had followed, she chose me. She said, "I have listened to all of you, and only you would be capable of telling the story of my uncle, who was in fact my aunt. I need to be delivered of the weight of this riddle, a secret that has long weighed on our family. My uncle's true identity was discovered on the day of his death. Ever since, we have lived through a nightmare. I thought that making this story public might turn it into a legend. As everybody knows, myths and legends are more bearable than harsh reality." She recounted in detail the story of Bey Ahmed. It took 2 days. I listened to her, thinking the whole time what I could do with this material, and how it could be adapted to our country. After all, there is very little difference between our 2 societies. They are both Arabic and Muslim, feudal and traditional. I asked her why she chose me. She said, perhaps to flatter me, that I had more imagination than the rest. Then she added, "Now the story is in you. It will occupy your days and nights, dig its bed in your body and your mind. You will not be able to escape it. It's a story that comes from far away. It is acquainted with death. Now that I have told it, I feel better, lighter, younger. I leave you a treasure and a deep well. Be careful. You must not confuse them. The same goes for your reason. Be worthy of the secret and its wounds. Pass on the story through the 7 gardens of the soul. Farewell, my friend, my accomplice." Before leaving me, she handed me a large notebook of over 200 pages. It contained the journal and thoughts of Bey Ahmed. I read it, reread it. Each time I was overcome, at a loss to know what I could do with this story. Then I began to tell it. The farther I got, the more I sank into the well. My characters began to desert me. Eventually I had to admit failure. Taking advantage of the clearing of the square, I headed off along the road to the south. When the book was emptied of its writing by the full moon, I was afraid at first, but these were the first signs of my deliverance. In the end, I too forgot everything. If any of you really wants to know how the story ended, he will have to ask the moon when it is full. I now lay down before you the book, the inkwell, and the pens. I shall now go away and read the Quran on the tomb of the dead. That's the end of the story.